They told me it was just a joke. Harmless costumes, kids with too much candy. I remember thinking that as I walked back to my car that night, the wind carrying the smell of burnt sugar and dry leaves. It was the kind of October cold that finds its way into your lungs and refuses to leave. 2 carved pumpkins guttered on the curb like low, tired lanterns, their smiles melting in the damp. I should have left then. I didn't. My name is Daniel, and I used to believe in ordinary things. Work, beer with friends, the occasional late-night walk to clear my head. I don't anymore. I don't know when the ordinary ended and the waiting began. It felt like arriving at the edge of a painting. Everything recognizable, but the colors wrong, the perspective tilted. The street lamps threw halos through the fog and made the shadows long and viscous, pooling under the trees. That's where I saw them first, halfway between the cemetery gate and the old boarded house. 4 figures standing as if someone had paused a parade. At first, they were only shapes, bulky silhouettes against the greenish fog. Then the moon nudged the clouds aside, and their faces came into the light. Not faces, I realized, but masks stretched over something with intent. Paint that had cracked like old plaster, smiles carved too wide, eyes dark as empty wells. One of them held 2 red balloons that bobbed and bumped like slow heartbeats. The sound of the balloons rubbing against each other was a thin, patient whisper in the quiet street. The nearer I got, the more the scene refused to make sense. Their clothes were anachronisms, striped, polka-dotted, collars stiff with age, but their movements were wrong. A puppet's jerk softened, then fluid, as if something beneath the fabric was learning how to walk. They did not sit on the steps or laugh. They simply stood and turned as I approached, as if they had been waiting for me to finish the sentence I didn't know I was saying. My phone buzzed in my pocket, no sender, and I felt the ache in my ribs that comes before panic, low and mechanical. I thought of calling someone, anyone. I thought of the safety of light. Instead, I stepped onto the path that led between them, the gravel crunching under my shoes like an accusation. Up close, I could smell it, the tinny sweetness of old candy, the sour tang of something rotten beneath waxy paint, the damp, metallic smell of breath. One of them lifted a hand, gloved fingers crooked in a mock invitation. The glove was stained. The air grew colder as if the night had inhaled. I remember my tongue going dry, the way my fingers trembled. And then, when I should have turned and run, he smiled, slow, deliberate, and not at all a joke. They moved when I moved, no staggered lag, no hesitation, matching my steps with an eagerness that felt rehearsed. The red balloons tugged at their strings like tiny suns, pulling shadows across their chests. For a moment, I believed I could still reason this out. Pranksters, actors, someone's autumn display. Then the nearest one tilted his head, and the sound he made was not a laugh but a low, wet clack like knuckles against a wooden fence. It threaded into my bones. I tried to sidestep, to put distance between me and the 4 of them, and the world narrowed until my peripheral vision screamed with movement, gestures too quick for the half-light. One of the clowns stepped forward, and the cobbles swallowed his shoes without a sound. Up close, his painted smile seemed to slide, as if the edges were not paint at all, but skin folding in on itself. He smelled of waxed rope and something metallic under it, like a coin dipped in rust. There was a rhythm now, a patient counting, the squeak of balloon strings, the whisper of fabric, the soft, lonely kiss of air against their masks. "Hey," I said, because saying anything is a reflex when your body is trying to pretend this is all ordinary. The voice that answered me came from everywhere at once, and nowhere in particular. It was a chorus of breath, shaped into a single thin syllable. I realized then that none of them had eyes in the way I am used to seeing eyes. When the moon struck them, the sockets were deep hollows that pulled at the light like drains. For a beat, I felt admired, inspected. For a beat, I believed they might be human, that under the paint was some kid in a costume. Then one of them spat on the ground and the spit hissed. My phone buzzed again, 3 short vibrations, and I knew I had stopped breathing. My hand fumbled, thumb finding the lock, only to find the screen a smear of static and the camera app open, facing me. The last photo I took had captured in a terrible stillness, the edge of a grin that was not painted but made of many teeth, too many, arranged in a child's smile. I deleted it with a thumb that felt too clumsy for my body, and the file would not go away. It remained as if the phone decided to keep it for itself. I should have run then. Instead, curiosity slicked over fear like oil, making the next step slippery and inevitable. One of them reached out and placed a gloved hand on my shoulder, light, almost tender, and the glove left a print that burned like acid. Under the touch, I heard a sound like children whispering in a language I almost understood. Names, maybe, chanted in the rhythm of a spell. As the glove pressed, a rusted taste filled my mouth, and the night thickened until sound folded inward. I tried to pull away and found my feet sinking, roots clinging to boots I no longer felt belonged to me. They circled. Not with the clumsy shuffle of people, but with the patient geometry of surgeons. Each took a place around me, and the air between our faces filled with the promise of small violences, soft pressures, clipped breaths, the click of something small and useful. One of them lowered his face until the painted smile was inches from mine. He breathed in a sound that smelled like attic dust and lemon, and when he exhaled my name, it was the sort of sound someone makes when they discover a favorite object, delighted, possessive, final. They closed the door with a sound like a seal. Inside, the house smelled of wet wood and old candle smoke. Lanterns hummed, and jack-o'-lanterns breathed low orange. They moved around me with a practiced economy, hands smoothing collars, a bowl set and tapped like a metronome. They sat me in a chair that had forgotten use. A cloth cooled my eyes as it settled over my head. Fingers, light, clinical, traced my face and began to paint. The smell of talc and lemon filled my mouth. The paint was thick and obscene. My hands obeyed late, muscle reply lagging, as if my body were learning to be itself again. The chanting started small, names and numbers knit into a slow cadence. With each repetition, small pieces of my memory flaked away. Words, a laugh, the color of an afternoon, until those hollows filled with new things. The metallic tang of coin, the crinkle of cellophane, the soft rub of balloon latex. A balloon bumped my knee, and it felt like an agreement. One of them lifted a mask. Inside was no human face, but a delicate instrument. Membrane, tiny gears, a contrivance that made an ideal smile when wound. They were not unmasking, to be honest. They were showing how honesty was made. The mechanism smiled, and the sound it made was pleasant and wrong. My phone buzzed on the dresser. I reached for it because I needed proof the world was still the world. The screen held a photograph taken from the chair, my eyes wide and a grin already painted across my mouth. The image was both before and after. Time had folded. I hurled the phone. It shattered without complaint. I found the mirror, and it offered me a face I did not recognize but had been waiting in the glass. Powder dusted my skin, crimson lined my lips, and the smile sat there like a promise I learned by touch. My fingers moved to the line and felt it settle under my skin as if sewn. When I came to, it was dawn, and I was on the porch. Wax flecked my thumbs, straw in my jacket. The street smelled of frost and empty garages. The pumpkins on the steps stared with the same patient faces they'd worn hours before. My phone was gone. The porch was otherwise unmarked. I do not know whether I was taken or made. I only know the mirror keeps the same patient expression when I pass it in the hall now. I woke up wearing their face.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.